I gotta tell somebody.
This is the best thing I've ever seen.
That. Let's talk about that.
You need this. Listen to this.
Memorable and exciting.
Well, then be less boring.
I'm going to tell everyone. Wait here.
Mighty remarkable, Big Daddy. Remarkable?
Welcome to Remarkable, a podcast for B2B marketers that deconstructs the most iconic moments in film, television, pop culture, and advertising for a single purpose: to give you, the B2B marketer, the same storytelling techniques that the pros use. In each episode, you will learn techniques from Hollywood, Pixar, Marvel, and beyond, from Spielberg's hands to yours, bringing remarkable content ideas to you every single week. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. This is Remarkable. This week, we're talking about B2B marketing lessons from A River Runs Through It.
It is often those we live with and love, the ones we care about the most, who elude us. Even now, when I look back on the Montana of my youth, I long to understand what happened there and why.
Norm, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Minister, I guess. What are you gonna be?
First or fly fisherman?
There's no such thing.
There isn't?
With the help of our special guest, CMO Simpro Rachel, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Ian?
I'm doing wonderful. Excited to chat with you today. We're going to talk about fly fishing, marketing, and everything truly in between. So why the heck did you pick A River Runs Through It?
Well, we always like to talk about what we're passionate about. And I've been an avid angler for really my whole life, but a fly fisher woman for about 10 years now. So when I thought about a content or a piece of content or a movie or some kind of production that I wanted to spend an hour chatting about in its relation to marketing, A River Runs Through It seemed like an amazing one to focus on.
It's also near and dear to my heart because I also am an angler, but I picked it up later in life. And the way that I did that is because I went fly fishing in Montana with my buddy and his dad. And, as they say, I was hooked. Getting outside into nature and talking about that as it relates to marketing is near and dear to my heart as well.
Well, this should be great then.
Okay. Before we get into that, tell us a little bit about what it means to be CMO of Simpro.
What it means to be CMO of Simpro is every day is a new day. We have a lot going on. If you're not familiar with Simpro, we are a field service management technology for the trades, by the trade. So if you think about anyone that's putting in HVAC or plumbing systems into large office buildings, commercial spaces, they need something to help them run their daily business operations. And that's really what Simpro allows commercial field services businesses to do. And I've been with Simpro for almost 2 years now. It's an Australian-based company that was founded out of Brisbane, Australia. It's been growing rapidly over the last 20 years, really, and has emerged into really a dominant market leader in the commercial field services space. So we have really started to move into some other markets like the UK and in the US, and it's been really exciting to be a part of. My day-to-day is really focused on marketing efficiency, marketing outputs, and how marketing is helping drive the business forward in terms of its growth, and how we talk about our customers and their success stories and the innovation that they're seeing leveraging our products. So it's a fun mix of both data and efficiency, as well as storytelling and creativity, and really is the place that I like to live in terms of understanding how the stories can help drive outputs and deliver results.
Meredith, what the heck is River Runs Through It?
So River Runs Through It started as a book.
That is Meredith O'Neill, our amazing producer extraordinaire.
It's by Norman MacLean, and he published it in 1976. And it's semi-autobiographical.
It is a vision. It is not a factual nonfiction narrative. And you just have to accept that, I think. What is true about it is the way my father felt about it and the way it acted on him and shaped his life and now shapes the lives of others. And that is a different kind of truth.
And originally it was titled A River Runs Through It, and other short stories. I think it's about 3 stories. And in it, McLean tells stories of him and his brother growing up in sort of rural, at the time, Missoula, Montana, and their deep love of fishing. And I really love the first line of the book, which is, "In our family, there was no clear line between religion and fly fishing."
So my brother and I learned to cast Presbyterian style on a metronome.
But as with many great works that we've talked about on the show, it almost didn't get made. It was written, but McLean actually really struggled to find a publisher, and he got rejected multiple times before it was finally taken on by the University of Chicago Press. And it was actually the first piece of fiction that they published, so it was unusual for them. And it ended up winning the Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 1977. Even then, though, McLean got a lot of attention from people who wanted to make the book into a movie, and he actually didn't want that to happen. He had said, "Not with my family, not with my stories." He just wasn't interested. But Robert Redford comes along, and I feel like it's got to be hard to say no to him, but especially because he had a really personal connection with the story. And Redford said, "Norman's story is something that I knew and I felt. And so I've always seen the story as a vehicle to tell a history of the West and also about how I was raised." But he said, "Norman was hard-nosed. The Montana guy and the University of Chicago guy, they're both very tough traditions in their own ways. I respected him enormously. And we worked hard at building trust. I didn't know him. He didn't know me. Finally, the trust is what did it." So obviously he did end up getting the rights and directing the movie, which came out in 1992. It starred Brad Pitt, which was actually his first pretty big role, Tom Skerritt and Craig Sheffer, and actually a young Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays young Norman, and it was his first film role. And super crazy. I think he's 10 years old in the movie, and he actually learned some of fly fishing just for this too. And about the movie, Redford said,
"But it's not an environmental film in the sense that you're talking about, isn't this wonderful? It's meant to be felt." And that's what the language is, that's what the experience is in the film, this family and how they grew up and their lives were shaped by growing up on this river in Montana, and the paths their lives took together and apart and how that affected them, their communication with each other, of course, all evolves around nature. So in that sense, it's meant to be a film that one has very strong feelings about the environment coming out of feeling rather than being talked to.
Brad Pitt actually had to learn how to fly fish for the movie as well.
No, I did not know how to fly fish. Started out learning on the roof of the production building, right? Casting. Then we got out to Montana and we started with hooks then. I spent 3 weeks, picking the damn hooks out of the back of my head. Because like a goss, when you get a hook or a slice, you're coming back and swap. Oh, man. And they got to dig it out with pliers if you didn't take the barb off. I feel like an idiot.
And he got help from Melissa Etheridge, which feels very random to me. She gave him lessons in her swimming pool, and she said she taught him how to cast.
I don't know, it came. It just came. There's a rhythm that sets in. And then you stay with the rhythm. The grace that the film talks about. Really.
But Robert Redford actually ended up bringing in fishing consultants and stunt doubles to make the fishing scenes look totally authentic. At the time, also the Blackfoot River, which was the river in the book.
The river was cut by the world's great flood and runs over rocks from the basement of time.
Was overfished and too developed. So Redford decided to film around the Gallatin River instead. So he definitely had to make some adjustments for the movie as well. But the year the movie came out, the fly fishing industry, I guess, saw a 60% surge in business, and that's according to Forbes.
The movie changed everything. It changed Montana. The book and the movie now define what Montana is, and it is getting overrun.
So obviously super successful, very, very popular as a book and as a movie. And if I were to take a couple lessons from this when it comes to marketing and content, I would say work to build trust with your audience. Like Robert Redford had to build trust with Norman McLean. Focus on how your content feels. I think that's super important. But that's all based on sort of the making of the movie and the book. But when it comes to fly fishing, the technique and everything, I mean, Rachel, you're a fly fisherman. I have tried learning and I am really bad at it.
Casting is an art that is performed on a 4-count rhythm between 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock.
And I feel like there's so much technique and learning that goes into it. I can't get the timing right and like loading the line. I just don't have a good feel for it. But Rachel, I'm wondering if you have seen parallels with sort of marketing and the technique of fly fishing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you've tried and not succeeded, I think you're either being too hard on yourself or you need a better guide. So I think
I'll tell my
anyone
husband
can learn how to fly fish. In fact, when I was learning how to fly fish, I remember I was in Mexico at one point I had probably been fly fishing for 3 or 4 years. And I was having a really hard time casting with the wind on the ocean, because when you're fishing in a stream, oftentimes the thing you're dealing with the most is a lot of trees in the way and getting into your back cast. And so you don't have as much wind blowing through, which is helpful. But when you're on an open expanse of, flats in Mexico, the wind is the most difficult thing that you contend with. And I had a guide, actually the owner of the lodge, take me out behind the flats in kind of the swamp side and showed me how to cast with a little less wind. And what he told me was that he was a big guy, like 6'5". He has shoulders were like probably 5 feet wide. And he's just throwing this line out, way out, 100 feet out into the water. And I'm barely getting my cast off the boat. And he told me about how he had seen this little old woman come down to Mexico, and she was probably in her 80s, and she stood up at the bow of the boat, and she'd been fly fishing her whole life, and she started casting, and she was casting, 100 feet out. And he said, it's not about strength. It's not about muscling it into something. It's about understanding the rhythm and the timing. And I think that's such a great lesson for anyone that's trying to achieve something, that a lot of times you want to just try to get to the end and be really perfect at something and try to just, put all of your strength into it and throw it as far as you can. But the reality is that actually makes it worse. It makes it harder. And if you can start to learn the rhythm, the feel, the timing of it, you can really start to see improvement. And I think how that relates also back to marketing is just that I've been marketing pretty much my entire career, and it's changed over the years from, you go back to the era of Mad Men and advertising and these great storytellers and amazing creative. And it's evolved into really, in some ways, this kind of coin-operated machine that if you could put enough, coins in the machine, you'll get enough coins back out. And I think sometimes it's hard to be a marketer because you want to have a pride in your craft, and you want to know that there's still this element of finesse and creativity and skill that goes into it. And it's often overlooked for just at the end of the day, like, what was the output? And I recently had this conversation in my day-to-day where we're looking at marketing efficiency metrics and looking at cost per lead. And I had to explain to the person I was talking to that cost per lead these days really doesn't mean anything. I could spend $1 on 3,000 spam leads and doesn't mean that I'm going to get any new sales or great deals out of it. What is hard is to measure the value of what you're spending money on that creates valuable, sustainable growth and customers who love the product and have success with the product. And that's really not just about spending certain money up front to attract those customers, but also following those customers in their journey and understanding how are you going to make them successful. Do they need more content around how to use the product? Do they need more content on use cases and what the next step for them is? Do they need to be connected with other partners or people in the ecosystem that might help them, grow their businesses even more? And as marketers, when we're looking at our investments and how we spend money, it's often all about, at the top of the funnel, how are you going to get more in the funnel? And there's much more nuance to it. And I think that when I look at fly fishing, it's a very nuanced sport, very nuanced practice. It's like something akin to yoga where there's little bits and pieces of muscles that have to come together to make a successful cast. And at the end of the day, you're also dealing with external factors like wind, sunlight, where the fish are, how they're moving, what the hatch is. And there's a lot of external factors that even if you have your best cast, don't necessarily mean you're going to be successful. So it's what makes it thrilling and exciting, and sometimes makes you want to pull your hair out, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, a bad cast still catches fish.
That's true. Some of my worst casts have caught fish. And nothing worse than a cast that you make where you're like, I'm just going to cast this out there one more time and see what happens. And then you're half paying attention and that's your one bite of the day and you're not able to set the hook. That's another one of my classic moves.
Yeah. Yeah, I think as it relates to River Runs Through It, I think that just from a story perspective, I think the idea of like, even like zooming out of like why this was so compelling to so many people. First of all, like Americans, and really, I would say not just Americans, I would say like everyone in the world is interested in fishing. And even if you've never been fishing or you've never thought about going fishing or wanted to go fishing, somewhere deep in your sinews of your body, your ancestors live near water, right? It's like whatever, 95% of the world's population lives near water. They were fishing, right? Like everybody was fishing at one point in time. Not to be like too meta about it, but just the idea of like, if you go to a pier like in California or, whatever, there is people from every single walk of life that is on that pier. There's people that are rich, there's people that are poor, there's people that are of every different like race and nationality and all those things. So I think that like fishing is this sort of pursuit of something that is like elusive, but also sort of very human. And it gets you outdoors and all those things. So when River Runs Through It specifically comes by, people kind of know about fishing, but they don't necessarily know about fly fishing. Because like if you grow up fishing in, wherever, Louisiana or New Jersey or, wherever, or, if you're a big bass fisherman, you might not have known sort of this aspect of fly fishing. And I think, Meredith, you said it exactly right, that with this story, it starts off that there's no distinction between religion and fly fishing. And I think that like we all have that version of ourselves. Our family takes something super seriously, whether it's like being a 49ers fan or whether it's being, whatever it is, the thing that, your family does that is the, you're super, super into, or skiing or whatever. And so to just like dive into this family and how important fly fishing is, I think it's just like a really interesting, look at teaching the audience something that they probably didn't know anything about. Or maybe they thought they knew something about, like, I think I know fishing, but I don't know fly fishing, for example. And so I think that's like part of the reason why the story like resonates so much with people. The other thing that I think is fascinating is like fly fishing on its sort of, if you were to look at it directly, it's incredibly boring to watch. So like to make a movie about something that like isn't really that interesting inherently, where you're like watching people fly fish, is actually a pretty sort of hard thing. So it's interesting that this became so popular, became such a like, massive hit, increased sales of fly fishing, and all that stuff, because, if you wrote it out, it didn't necessarily have all of the makings for something that would be successful. And I think that, because it was a novel and because it was a successful novel that, and this is, at a different time and, all that stuff, but I think that it just gets at the element of family and obsessions and what your family does and what they take serious and how those things aren't always actually about the fishing. It's about sort of your family, but also it is still about the thing and being good at the thing. So anyways, it's just, I think that that's some of the reasons why the actual story was so successful.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there was an element too around purpose. The opening line is all about the fact that they didn't see a difference, and they're children of a reverend, and they, in their family, they didn't see a difference between religion and fly fishing. And what I think by the end of the book, what you really get to the root of is that the family viewed life as, being a part of life as having a purpose. And the main purpose that book really kind of underscored was around these brothers and their love for one another and this shared love of fishing, which just happened to be the thing that they did together. But what it was ultimately about was this kind of unconditional love of one another. And when I think about fly fishing, for me, I always joke that, I work, so I have all these expensive hobbies, fly fishing being one of them. I work so that I can go and do my hobbies. But for me, it's really about having some purpose in my life that sits outside of myself. And as you were talking, Ian, about the kind of primal instinct that people are connected to fishing that they have, I do think that's an element of it, that it's this kind of primal feeling of needing to do something that is challenging, has purpose, can sustain life, is done really with a relatively simple amount of tools at the end of the day, and having a really strong understanding of meaning around it. And now that I have kids and I take them fishing and they complain almost immediately about not catching anything, the classic line of, well, that's why they call it fishing, not catching. And is actually, when you think about it, I think a guidance for life, that most of what we're doing is fishing, not catching. We are exploring, not always arriving, but exploring. And it's the fact that it's not about the destination, it's the journey. Fishing is another version of that. And there's a great quote in the film and also in the book that I'll read, which is, "The cast is so soft and slow that it can be followed like an ash settling from a fireplace chimney. One of life's quiet excitements is to stand somewhat apart from yourself and watch yourself softly becoming the author of something beautiful, even if it is only a floating ash." And for me, when I think about the work and the work that my team does, that we do every day, you can get really bogged down in the day-to-day of like getting things done, working on projects. But if you can stand apart from it and look at what you're doing, in our case, we are building a really strong, sustainable business. We're helping small businesses and mid-sized businesses grow and get better. We're impacting people's lives in their families to be able to have these successful businesses. Standing apart from yourself and observing that is a really powerful thing. And in the case of fly fishing, maybe it feels like, oh, you're just casting and trying to catch a fish, and that's oftentimes not catching a fish. You're just watching these things, these small little tiny specks of a hook float down. But there's something special in that too, and it's really an end in of itself, not a means to an end. That I think is why people are very compelled by the concept of it.
So when I went fly fishing, really for the first time ever, I think I was probably, I don't know what I was, 28, something like that, 29 maybe. And so I went out there, and this was like it was really like a transformational sort of like moment in my life, which like I didn't realize at the time. And this is what they say happens to people when they go fly fishing. If you've never been, like, I don't know how to explain it to you other than like, you sit there, you're in the waders, you have all this stuff, you learn how to fish, you do all these things, hopefully you're with a guide, and then you're out there and 8 hours go by in the blink of an eye. And you're like, I got to get back out there.
I am haunted by waters.
It's a bizarre feeling. So anywho, that is for sure how it was for me. But the thing that was so interesting to me was, I went out there with 3 friends, and each of us had a guide. And this is, to me, the big marketing lesson that I learned from fly fishing that I think of all the time, like every single day. I think about this, and it relates to marketing and it relates to sales, which are one and the same, which is the first guide. We went out there and we fished for 8 hours. We came back. I caught 10 fish. My buddy caught 1, and my other friend caught 0. And we're like, how's that possible? We're with 3 guides. And so my guide, he was like, he's a very non-patient person. And he just grabbed my hand and he's like, we're just going to trudge up the river. We're going to go to like where the honey holes are. We're going to cast 10 times in that spot. If nothing bites, we're going to switch the fly out, cast 10 more times. Nothing bites, switch the lure out or the fly out, cast 10 more times. Oh, you caught a fish. Okay, throw that lure, or throw that fly as much as possible. And just, trudging up the river, leaving everyone sort of behind. The second guide was extremely patient. He's a pro. He's going to work every single angle of the entire river.
You are a fine fisherman.
Only need 3 more years before I can think like a fish.
I'm already thinking like a dead stonefly. Pictures. Oh, there's pictures.
So like every single nook and cranny of the entire river, he's gonna fish. And so they just moved a lot slower. And they'd switch flies out, and but they'll work that. And the third person fished with the same fly the entire time. And they were fishing, hoppers, and it wasn't hopper season. And so they're using the wrong fly the entire time. And I think that it's such a great marketing lesson for me, which is there's a time to be patient. And when you're doing it by yourself, maybe that's something where you say, hey, I can be patient and I can check the entire river. But when you're guiding someone else where they need to catch some fish, you got to get them to do something. You got to get the action to be taken. You can't really, afford to be patient all the time. There's other times where you can. At the end of the day, we're all sitting there talking about all this stuff. And one of the guides goes, this fish is about 3,000 fish per mile for this creek that we're on. And so he's like, we walked about 2 miles, so you guys walked by 6,000 fish. And you're just like, how is it possible that, you missed that many? But I think that that's part of the thing is even with the right situation, circumstances, and all those things, that you still might not catch anything, or you still might completely strike out. And it wasn't your fault at all. And sort of, you got bad advice. And I think you really need to focus on the areas where you have the highest probability for success and, be testing and iterating within those areas. But you also have to have belief that the fish are there, right? You have to know that this is the right area where they would be. There's a riffle of a stream, there's a big pool, there's, a deep area, there's a bunch of, logged. We know that there's been fish there before. You have to believe that that spot is going to have them. And you can't waste time on the areas where you don't have belief. You can't say there might be one under that rock. There probably is. And so I'm going to fish there for 2 hours to try to get that one under the rock. Yes, Rachel, sorry, go ahead.
No, I love it. I mean, I think what I'm thinking about is also, it depends on how you're defining success, right?
Exactly.
Maybe the persistence of being in one spot for 2 hours is the one big deal that you're trying to get in the door. Maybe the 6,000 that you walked by were never going to be good customers, right? So I think defining success too is always a big part of what I do in marketing, is understanding what are the outcomes that we actually want to drive. You can grow like crazy, but you could also spend a ton of money trying to grow, and then you affect profitability and EBITDA. Or you can cut like crazy, but you're going to affect your growth. And so it's interesting, especially with some of the kind of macroeconomic conditions happening around marketing these days, especially in private equity-backed marketing organizations like the one I'm in. You really have to understand what is the outcome that you're trying to achieve as a marketing leader, or even if you're in an individual contributor role. What is the strategy? Is the strategy to grow? Is the strategy to optimize? Is it to grow in a certain vertical, which means then you're going to walk straight past a bunch of fish, right, to get to the vertical that you're focused on. And maybe you've decided that that's what you need to do as a business. But if you don't have a really clear picture of what success is going into it, it's going to be hard. And it's also making me think of, I recently took my marketing leadership team fly fishing. Did I tell you this the last time we talked, that I was going fly fishing? I can't remember. Okay. Anyway, so I took my marketing leadership team fly fishing about a month ago now. We recently, Simpro acquired a company called Big Change that's based in Leeds, outside of London in the UK. And we went there to work on some of the integration work we're doing with Big Change. And one of the days while we were there, my marketing leadership team has been working really hard, round the clock, on this acquisition. I wanted to take them out, do some team building, and decided that fly fishing would be the best thing to do in November in the UK. And so we headed out to a little town south of London. And I really didn't know what to expect. But when we were planning ahead of time, I told them, I said, hey, we're going to go fly fishing. Make sure you wear lots of layers. I gave them a mood board of here's the clothes you need to wear, layer up, have some rain gear, wear some sturdy boots. We weren't wearing waders. We were bank fishing. So I said, just brace yourselves. And one of the people on my team said, hey, are we going to have a contest for, whoever catches the most fish, are they going to get a prize? And I was thinking in my mind, hopefully someone catches a fish.
Yeah.
That's how I'm defining success. And it's funny, people have never been fly fishing, think, we're going fishing. Maybe we'll have a volume-based game and contest. And so we get out there and they all start, none of them had ever been fly fishing. Some of them had varying degrees of like awareness of fly fishing. Some of them really had no concept of it. They didn't know anything about it. Like when I brought my rod with me, because why not? And when I started putting it together, they were like, oh, that's interesting. Like it comes in a case. That's so cool. It's so handy for travel. And I'm like, no, this is literally how every fly fishing rod is. And so, we get out there and this was a stocked fishery. So they stock it with rainbows and they stock it with brown trout. And I could see these things. I mean, I had my polarized glasses on and I could see these monster rainbows just swimming around in these two kind of basically like lakes. And we had 2 guides. Of course, they left me all by myself. We had 6 other people. So there was 3-day guide. They gave me 1 fly and they sent me off and said, good luck. And, I immediately knew that I was probably not going to catch anything because I knew that those fish were getting fished a lot and saw a lot of flies. And probably the 1 fly they gave me was not going to be a very exciting one to them. But I looked at it as an opportunity to work on my casting and enjoy the beautiful fall day. The color in the trees was amazing. And every once in a while, I would look around to see how my team members were doing. And they were kind of spread out in different spots along the bank on these 2 different ponds. And I felt this just overwhelming sense of gratitude and pride in all of them that they were willing to attempt this. I remember the first time I went fly fishing, it was freezing cold. The water temperature was probably like 50 degrees and we were wearing waders and I was cold the entire time. My hands were cold and I loved it, but I found it really challenging. It took me a long time to get the casting down and my team members were like casting pros. Like they were out there casting in no time and doing a great job. And I kept thinking, I remember I like tangled my line like every cast. Like I could not cast without tangling my line. And they were not needing a lot of support, which I was really impressed with. And because I think you could see the fish pretty well, they were on it. Like they wanted to catch fish. And so we were out there for 3 or 4 hours and it was a lot of casting because when you're, sight casting, you're picking up and casting a lot. And I kind of finally was like, all right, I've been out here for 3 hours with the same fly. I'm done. And I like packed it up and started going around taking pictures of them and, asking them what they thought about it. And every one of them said, wow, this is a great way to spend some time. It's, out in nature. They all really enjoyed it. And I would ask them like, would you ever go fly fishing again? And all of them said yes. They said this is great. And so I'm like, okay, well, like we can go now. Like, we're going to go to this pub down the street, have a warm lunch and, a couple drinks and they're still casting. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to like go put my rod away. And there's like this little coffee shop right there that you could go in and get coffee and all the anglers, like these old grizzled British men are all sitting in there drinking coffee. And I said, okay, I'm going to go like get a coffee and they're all still casting. And this is impressive. Like these people have never fly fished and they're still out here trying to catch a fish. And so finally, one by one, they all start kind of going, okay, like maybe next time. And finally we're down to just 2 people that are just casting. And they're really actually pretty close to one another. And the guy who had asked if we were having a contest for the most fish is still casting, still has not caught a single fish. And all of a sudden, I hear a shriek and I look over and it's actually my executive assistant, V, has a fish on the line. And I am just like, oh my God, like I'm like dropping everything, running over there. I'm like, okay. And the guide is telling her and this fish is fighting. Like it's running. It does not want to be caught, obviously. And she's like, he's like, rod tip up. And it's about as exciting as landing a fish gets because she has no idea what she's doing, but she's following instruction extremely well. Like she is listening to his every word. And so she is, I'm just watching the whole thing in awe because I'm like, this fish, is she really going to land this fish or is it going to like come off the hook? Like, did she set the hook? I'm thinking about all the ways it could go wrong and all the ways that I've lost fish. And eventually he's, we're now like almost to the leader. The fish is at the bank. Now all the guide has to do is get this big net out and land this thing, right? And I can see the fish, and it's a good sized fish. Like, it's what I would consider, like, would have been my personal best trout by far. And so I'm just thinking, is this going to happen? I don't know, like between the guide and her, like, I don't know. And he's being very cautious about landing it. Like, he's not putting the net in the water. I guess he probably knew that, like, if he did that, it would run again. So he's kind of dancing around behind her, trying to get the net out. And by the way, the guy that wanted the fish contest is still casting over here. And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, like, what if he gets just one? So finally, he puts the net under, and I see the fish in the net, and I'm just like so relieved that this fish has been landed, and so excited for her. And I was like, I cannot believe you caught a fish. Like, this is so exciting. And I think because no one else caught a fish, everyone comes running out. Everyone wants to see this fish. And she's like the most girly girl person I know. One of the most girly girl people I know. She and I talk about high fashion. We talk about purses. We talk about getting our nails done. She got her eyelashes done for the trip. And she's never, ever done this before. This big trout's on the ground. And I look at her and I go, all right, are you ready to pick it up and take a picture? Like, you got to get a picture with this fish. And she's like, okay. And I'm thinking, okay, great. And I said, you just pick it up, and she's like, I don't know. I said, here, I'll pick it up and I'll hand it to you. So I pick up this big fish and I hand it to her, and she takes it with her long, freshly manicured nails, and she's holding this fish, smiling. And we all are just like cheering, taking pictures. Finally, the guy that wanted the fish contest gives it, and, it's like, I can't compete with this. And so we were so excited for her. And I was like sending text messages of the picture of her with a fish to like all the people we knew back in the United States, and saying, look, she caught a fish. And, we finally went to take a group picture. And when we went to take a group picture, we decided that since none of us caught a fish, we would just hold her. So we laid her sideways across us and held her up like a fish and took the photo. And I don't think without context, people understood why we did that. But with context, it makes a lot of more sense. But it was such like a fun moment. And even though she was the only person that caught a fish, it was like we all caught a fish. Like, it was this very exciting, very special thing that I was like a proud mom. And I think that is another part around fishing that people don't always realize, is that while it is and can be a very solitary activity, and it's something that you often are standing there by yourself, working on something by yourself, maybe, looking at a certain fish or targeting a certain area, there is a ton of teamwork in it behind the scenes, between talking about, what line you're using and what fly you're using, and where the best spots are, and helping with tips and tricks. And, even, Ian meeting you over this process, there's always a kinship that gets formed between anglers. And I think that it's a great way to reinforce community and teamwork and celebrating one another and the successes. And successes are sometimes hard to come by. So it was a fun moment for us.
That's an amazing story. I love that so much. I think like one of the sort of lessons that I have about fishing, and this is just fishing broadly, not just fly fishing, is like the difference between 0 and 1 is so, I can't even tell you. It's like the biggest thing ever. When you go home, and I'll tell a quick story because we're telling fishing stories. So we had a baby shower a couple weekends ago because we have a baby coming.
Oh, congrats.
So thank you. Yeah. So I took out my son, who's 3, and 2 of his grandpas. We went out fishing, and everybody else did the baby shower. And so we went out fishing. And so the whole thing, you're going to come back, and everybody, when we're leaving, is like, go catch us dinner, all that stuff. So we go fishing, and so we're out there, and it's like super windy, and like the wind is whipping, and we're at this like point, and like fishing's always windy because it's a big waterway, whatever. And we fished, and we're like checking lines and doing all this sort of stuff and fishing for hours. And like, 3-year-olds do, 3-year-old stuff. And we fish all day and just absolutely nothing. Don't see anyone else catching fish, just like a total, just like there's no fish there. And we go over, we switch to this other spot, no fish, same sort of thing. And we go to this pier, this little pier, and we're like, all right, let's fish from the pier for a little while. Nothing. Don't see anyone catch a fish the whole day. And we're like, all right, let's pack it all up. We get up, get all the rods out of the water. And my son is just, he loves fishing. He just loves like reeling and like the rods, and he has his own rod. I bought him like a little spinning rod that like he loves just like spinning it, and he loves spinning the big rods and like everything. And he's like, Daddy, put it back in the water. I'm like, dude, like we got to go. And he's like, put it back in the water. I'm like, you haven't taken a nap yet. Like, he's like, put it back in the water. I'm like, fine. So I take the rod, I put it back in the water, and I'm like cleaning everything back up. And we go to pull up the last rod, and I start reeling it in. And I'm like, oh, there's no way. And I reel it up, and there was a Dungeness crab that had grabbed onto the bait or whatever, because we were fishing with little shrimp, grabbed onto the bait and was like sort of hooked, and I like pulled it over. And I mean, you would have thought like we won the lottery. Like all of us are like yelling and screaming. We're like, it's like going crazy. My son is excited. You know, I pick up the crab and we take photos with the crab or whatever. And you can't even, I've never even seen anyone catch a crab from this area, and you can't keep them anyways because they're in the bay. And so, you know, like we toss it back. But like, it's just like changes everything. And like, you know, there's a lot of sales sort of, you know, getting that sale or getting that, you know, one thing. But I think that like marketing is about the story. It is about the thing that you can go tell other people. And when you get to come back, whether it's from like an event or your podcast series or this or that or anything like that, and you get to go back and everyone says, what'd you get? And you get to go, oh, well, you know, it was a slow day, but we did catch a crab. You know, and here's the photo of all of us, you know, with this crab. And the difference between that and nothing is like so big. And even if it's like the smallest, tiniest, you know, crab that you should have never even caught and that like is even legal to catch in that area, and you throw it back, but nobody cares. It's about like that story. And I think that like every great fishing story is a story, right? It's like you go out, you don't know what that day is going to hold. And then you come back and you see something, or you see like a heron jumped in and grabbed a fish. Like we've seen bald eagles and ospreys and all sorts of crazy stuff, and coyotes, all sorts of crazy things. But it's like you have that thing, it's the unknown, and then you come back and you get to tell people. And I think that marketing is so much like that. Is like you have to have conviction. You go to the place, you try your best. If you don't, you know, get all the leads or opportunities or whatever it is, that you get that story that you can go back and say, hey, this is why this was worth it, because somebody came up to me and said that this was the best dinner they ever went on, or, you know, that they met someone that, you know, oh my goodness, I met this person and, you know, they shared something with me. And I'm just so thankful that you did that event. And like that to me is, fishing is about that. And I think marketing is about that too, is about, you know, having conviction, going to the place, doing the work, and then, you know, being able to tell that story effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the fishing stories make it all worthwhile. And I've certainly had my share of wanting to catch a fish and being like, oh yeah, like this is going to happen today. And the worst feeling is coming back and realizing you got skunked. And
it's the worst.
Especially on a stocked pond in the UK on a sunny day. We had, you know, good weather and there was no excuses for us. So I was really glad someone landed one. And I will say too, like
the biggest excuse, what are you talking about, is good weather.
It was, yeah, exactly. Good weather. It was too sunny. That's right. It was too still. The water was too still. They were very spooky.
If it's great weather, you're like, oh, I'm getting skunked today. This is a perfect day.
That's never going to happen. Yeah. No, I mean, let me just say, there were a bunch of very experienced anglers there at those ponds, and they weren't having much luck either. So I felt a little better after we all got more or less skunked. But it was a joint win for sure. And I think when it comes to marketing and fishing, the storytelling aspect is certainly a huge part of it, and appreciation for the story, right? Like having an appreciation for the fact that it's not just going to happen immediately, and that you're paying attention along the way to kind of the nuances of what's going on to even be able to tell the story later on. The wind, the sun, the light, you know, the way the trees are, like what kind of water it is, you know, how many fish you actually see, the people in the, you know, that are surrounding the area, and some of the characters you meet along the way. It is definitely a sport, I think, that invites storytellers, which is probably why Norman MacLean himself, who ultimately became an English professor at the University of Chicago. He was, by definition, a storyteller, and a beautiful one at that, and had a lot of success later in life because of that. But, the aspect of fishing really can become a bit of a muse, I will say.
Rachel, wonderful having you on the show. We could tell fishing stories all day, and we should, honestly. But it's just been great topic. We really appreciate it. For our listeners, can go check out Simpro. Any final thoughts? Anything to plug?
Appreciate you inviting Simpro to the podcast, and hopefully we all get to go fishing together sometime.
Indeed. My final marketing piece of advice for this is take your prospects and customers and your team members fishing. They will remember it.
That is for sure.
It's memorable and remarkable. Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Well, that's it for today. I hope you got some good ideas for your B2B content. Thank you for listening to Remarkable. I'm Ian Faison, CEO of Caspian Studios. Remarkable is created by the team at Caspian Studios, B2B podcast as a service. Caspian also creates fiction series for B2B companies, so if you want a business thriller, you can learn more at caspianstudios.com. Hollywood-style storytelling for B2B. And in today's episode, you heard from myself, Ian Faison, and Meredith O'Neill, senior producer here at Caspian Studios. Remarkable was produced this week by Meredith O'Neill, mixed by Scott Goodrich, and our theme song is Solomon by Falak. Be remarkable and rise above the noise.